Welcome to Beyond the Chutes. It's presented by Parasite Systems. Today, Sam and I are riding for the brand, BTC. We are your hosts today, Doug Simcox, Sam Swearingen. Of course, Sam is three-time North America Rodeo Commission Saddle Bronc Riding Champion. And, hey, speaking of NARC, Sam, I had an opportunity to talk to Tom Harvey the other day, and he was the last president of the North America Rodeo Commission, so El Paso and on, and he told a story about how Coors got involved in the sport of professional rodeo, and it was at the North America Rodeo Commission's finals in Denver, Colorado, that they got Mr. Coors, Pete Coors, involved in the sport of professional rodeo. So that was the first sponsorship for Coors.
Yes, and Doug, I was only two-time champion, not three.
Oh, did I say three?
I'd love to say three, but
okay.
I was second like 4 or 5 times.
Oh, so, my goodness. Many times
yes.
I've said that, Sam. You would think I'd have this right by now. 2 times Saddle Bronc Riding Champion.
But, yeah, actually, one of my saddles says Coors World's Finals Champion right on it.
Okay.
And I met Peter Coors that year that I won it, and he's I'm 5'7" with heels, but he was very tall. That's one thing I really remember. Very, very tall. He's like probably 6'6", 6'7".
Yeah. Well, that's fun. That was a bit of trivia I picked up from that conversation, and very interesting. And a little bit more interesting trivia. One of the reasons the North America Rodeo Commission ended when it did, it ran out of money. And that was because Coors moved down the road to the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association, Sam.
Well, they had Sam syndrome, ran out of money. I get it. Hard to keep going.
Takes money to go. We're going to be talking about money and what it takes. Sam, it's that time of the year. Rodeo cowboys, cowgirls getting their vehicles out, starting to pound the miles on the highways. You remember those days, hustling from rodeo to rodeo. And I want to say to these folks as they're going down the road, I had an opportunity to talk to Eli the other night, Eli Hirschberger, of course, and he was traveling from the Carolinas back to Michigan, and he called to say thank you. We helped keep him awake as he drove all night, Sam. Beyond the Chutes helped him. So we appreciate Eli for listening and all of our listeners out there.
Sorry. He should have had it a few years ago when he. Never mind.
We
should
won't
have
go
had it
there.
a few years ago.
Absolutely.
He didn't stay awake.
Yeah.
Talking about money and the money man, I guess who we're talking to today, Mr. Russ Romano. He's got the money and a good guy. So it'll be a great conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when we talk about steer wrestling, I don't know, I probably said it, 1,000 times in the rodeo arena as I announced in the steer wrestling. I always said they were the big men of rodeo. Every announcer in the sport of rodeo says that, the big men in rodeo. I always compared them to if they were football players, they'd be the linebackers, the defensive ends, the tackles. Just so you know, I've been watching Ballers on Netflix. If you haven't seen that, you ought to check that out. That's where anyway, football. No, the Ballers. Okay. So today, I think we'll get on to it, Sam. I think we'll get on to it.
Yeah, you better. I don't understand where you're headed, so let's leave it alone.
It's a Netflix. No, it's the name of the show, The Ballers, on Netflix. And today we got a football. So as I've always introduced steer wrestlers and said big men and they're the football players, if you will. Today we actually have with us, you already said his name, Russ Romano, a football player turned steer wrestler. Had quite a football career. And joining us on the phone today is New York Rodeo Cowboy, Mr. Russ Romano. Welcome to BTC, Russ.
Oh, thank you, Doug, and thank you, Sam. Nice to be here.
Good to have you with us. My goodness. You're in Florida today, is that right?
That's correct, Cocoa Beach.
Okay, but you grew up in the state of New York?
In Rochester, New York.
In Rochester, okay. So take us back to Russ growing up, earliest memories,
Sure.
a bit of your experiences.
Well, the growing up in Rochester is the reason that I wind up in the rodeo business many years later, because I grew up less than 2 blocks from Gary Sikoria, who you've had on several of your podcasts,
Yeah.
who was an outstanding bareback rider and champion in the Empire Rodeo Association several years. And he was also a great steer wrestler. And he did ride a bull occasionally.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen pictures. Yeah.
So as a young boy growing up in that inner city, what we didn't know as kids is that we were all poor. So any opportunity to do an odd job to pick up a few bucks, even a couple of quarters, we were ready to do that. Of course, I met Gary going to 21 school. We all went to the same grade school together, but Gary was 2 years ahead of me in school. Well, he liked music and I liked music, and we wound up taking the trumpet together.
Okay.
So one time I would go to his house and we'd practice the trumpet at his house, and his mother would be rolling her eyes back like a calf in a hailstorm because we're making all this noise. And then the next week we'd come to my house and practice in my house, and I had the same response from my mother.
Okay.
So we practiced playing the trumpet for, I don't know, maybe a half a year, and it kind of faded out of our lives, and neither of us really kept the trumpet up over the years as we got into high school and whatever.
Okay. Now, at that point, were either you or Gary, I don't believe so, involved in the sport of rodeo or had been around rodeo?
No, but he, being 2 years older than me, and his older brother, Ron, loved horses because of their dad and their father's background out in Colorado. So I already knew Gary and Ronnie because we used to play at the playground together, 21 playground, and I knew that they would go to Siemens Stables just outside the Rochester city limits in a town called Gates, Gates. Gates, New York, had a little farm out there with a little barn, and the guy had a hack string, and it was called Siemens Stables. And you could go there and you could ride a horse for a half hour in a hack string. And that's what Gary and Ronnie used to save their money to go ride at Siemens Stables. That's probably the beginning of his love for horses. And it wasn't long after for me to see him as a role model that I used to go with my older brother, Wayne, and we used to save up money. We used to be the paper boys in the local neighborhood. So we'd save up enough money, and my brother and I would walk, probably a mile and a half to get the Siemens stable to ride a horse. Because at the time we did get a television, it was only 11 inches in size, and all we used to see were cowboys on TV all the time.
You bet.
I mean, my favorite was Hopalong Cassidy. My mother bought me an outfit, and I still got a picture in the family album. She bought me the hat, the 2 pistols, the belt. I mean, I was set to go. I had chaps, the whole 9 yards, and I don't think I was 7 years old.
Well, that's really something, Russ. And, knowing the area a little bit, Gates is part of Rochester now. I mean, it's grown. There's not much country in Gates anymore. So
exactly.
That's kind of a unique scenario. And, when you say Gates out in the country, it's just all one. So, and with Ron and Gary, what a tribute to what you can do. I don't know, how poor they were or what, but, Gary, of course, becoming a police officer for years and starting the Livingston County Mounted Police. But Ron was a judge here in Livingston County, was probably, when he retired, the head judge of the area.
Both involved
Exactly.
in the law.
Western New York, he was 30 years on the county bench and state Supreme Court.
Oh, wow. That's something we hadn't heard before. And thank you for bringing us that, guys.
Now, Doug, I know you're from the Midwest, and Sam would know this because in Leicester, New York, there were quite a few Italian people down there. When you met an Italian family that ate polenta
Ah,
about 3 to 4 times a week, you knew they were poor because they would make different dishes using polenta, which is kind of like an offshoot of what you would call tofu today if you were getting Asian food or something,
made of corn, isn't it, Russ?
Yeah, it's a corn-based cornmeal.
Okay. Yep.
And Gary's mom was wonderful at making polenta taste good.
Okay. Very interesting.
Huh.
I had the good experience of going over there because right behind their house was what we called the lot.
The lot.
It was an open area, not very big, where we would play football, and we didn't have to go to the playground. We could play right behind Sicoria's house, and then his mother would come out the back door and say, "Would you like something to drink or a little something to eat?" So that was how it all started.
Wow. Okay. So the lot, football, and polenta. Polenta.
Polenta, exactly.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay. And was that your first exposure to football?
That was my first exposure to football. I played a lot of baseball and football in the back lot.
Okay.
Yep. And then we progressed up to actually get on an official team at the playground. But like my mom used to say, I never let any dust grow under my feet. I was always playing sports and staying out of trouble.
Okay. And so you found that junior high. Is that junior high age we're talking about or earlier?
Well, I started, we used to play at the playground before that. But by the time I was in the 8th grade, I was the water boy on my brother's football team at Madison High School in Rochester. Pretty tough inner city school.
Was it? Okay.
Madison had a reputation of having a lot of tough kids and a very good athletic program.
Okay.
To boot.
And then organized ball when you were in junior high. Is that when you picked it up?
Well, as I got into as much as I enjoyed football from the water boy standpoint, I got around those guys that were older than me, and I would see them lifting weights and doing things that not a lot of athletes did back then. So I got on a weightlifting program with 2 of my friends who lived even closer to Gary and Ronnie on the corner of Massa Street and Colvin Street. We had a little gym in the basement of Ray Cartonia's house because he was the only kid that could afford the weight. We had free weights, and we would lift weights 3 days a week.
Okay.
And I was probably 12, 13 years old, and that's when I started getting stronger.
Yeah. And how would you describe yourself weight, height at that point? So you're 12, 13 years old, just starting
12,
to work
13.
out.
Yeah, I'm probably not maybe 5'8" or 5'9".
Okay.
By the time I'm lifting weights, by the time I'm a sophomore at Madison, I'm 6'1", and I'm about 220.
Oh, wow.
And when I graduated, I was 6'1.5", and I was 237 pounds in college, but I still ran a 4.75 40.
A 4.7. Okay.
So that's why a lot of college coaches took an interest in me in my junior and senior year in high school, in that little Madison High School in Little Rochester, New York. I had 22 full scholarship offers to go to college.
Holy cow, 22. Division I
well,
schools?
I was fortunate to be, I was named All-American in my senior year, offensive center, middle linebacker in 1964.
Really? So All-American center and linebacker. So you played both ways, you offense and defense. How big was this school? How many kids were on the team?
Yeah, I don't Well, we didn't. I don't think we had enough to play both ends of the thing. I mean, a lot of guys played offense and defense with me, but I never came out of the game. From I started as a sophomore as a linebacker and center, and I never missed a minute of play all in my high school career.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, it wasn't my choice, but they used to actually bring a little water out in a pail with a little ladle, and you drink the water that way. Like you see them drinking water on Gunsmoke.
Right, right. Yeah. So back time
the water out of the bucket. That's the way it was. We didn't have Gatorade back then.
Right, it hadn't been invented yet. So 22 college scholarships, all Division I, Division II. What was it?
Yeah, they were
then?
Mostly all Division I. There was a few out in Midwest. I remember the one school used to send me something like every week. There was a Division II school, but everything else was Division I, from Notre Dame to Syracuse to the University of Nebraska, Iowa, Connecticut. I wound up going to Rhode Island. It's a long story on that, but I'll make it shorter when we talk about it. But West Point, from my sophomore year, West Point wanted me to go to college, but our country was heading into a war, and my parents weren't too excited about that.
Yeah, that would have been the Vietnam era for sure. So opportunity to go to West Point. Do you remember did you do a lot of recruiting trips? I mean, did you do a lot of college visits? So
the college visits that I had, I never had flown on a plane before, being a poor kid in a poor neighborhood. But the head coach at Syracuse University and the head coach at Buffalo both invited me to go to the schools and visit and so on. And they flew me from Rochester to Syracuse, which Sam could drive faster in his truck to get there than I could go from the airport in the Mohawk airline to get to Syracuse. So Floyd Schwartzwalder and the coach in Buffalo was Dick Oppenheimer.
Oh, wow.
And his defensive coordinator was Buddy Ryan.
Oh, my.
So they flew me into both of those schools. And, of course, in Syracuse, I met a guy named Floyd Little. He was there, and a big kid named Larry Zonka.
Yes, I remember him. Yeah.
So they put me in a dormitory with a kid named Charlie White, who played out in Massillon, Ohio. That was big back then, Ohio schools.
You bet.
Massillon was one of the biggest. And we stayed with Charlie White for a couple of days, and they worked this out in the field house back then. And back then they could actually give you an envelope that had money in it.
Okay.
And it was for your supposed expenses on campus.
Okay.
And when I go to Buffalo, I wind up with a guy named Jim McNally. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he becomes one of the best ever NFL offensive line coaches, Jim McNally.
Okay, in
and
Buffalo.
He wasn't that big. If he hit 5'9", that was tall. Okay. So it was Jerry and a guy named Philibin. Philibin wound up going to the Jets. He was an undersized defensive end who became an All-Pro. I don't know if he got into the Hall of Fame, but Jerry Philibin played in Buffalo.
Okay.
Now, I remember Buddy Ryan back then with that Southern drawl. When we were putting the gym there, they made us play basketball, which I wasn't too bad at basketball either, coming out of Madison High School. So I knew my way around the basketball court, but I knew I had to be tough under the boards that day. So I was pretty tough under the boards, grabbing a lot of rebounds, and then we sat down in the bleachers, and Buddy Ryan comes over, and he grabs my tricep, and he says, "Russ Romano, I want you to play linebacker for Buddy Ryan." That was pretty exciting. And I probably should have took him up on it. It would have given me a greater opportunity, because my friend at Madison High School, 2 years ahead of me, Grenard Poles, went to the University of Buffalo, and I guess that's probably why they were interested in me.
Yeah.
Because Grenard probably told them I was a pretty good football player.
Yeah.
And Grenard wound up playing for Buddy Ryan, and he wound up going to the Canadian Football League. Started out with the Edmonton Oilers, and he was Rookie of the Year in the Canadian Football League defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
He was a tough line break.
Wow.
I think in his third year in Canada, in the fourth year, he got traded to Winnipeg, and he played a total of about 5 years. He still lives in Buffalo.
Oh, he does. Okay. So
and
still
his
local.
family, what would be his cousin's son, is the general manager of the Chicago Bears.
Oh, wow.
His
Okay.
last name is Poles.
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 Okay.
So Grenard gets a hold of me, and he said, "What are you going to do about school?" I said, "I'm up in the air, and I have an uncle on Long Island who's a principal of the school on Long Island, and he wants to go on the Rhode Island trip with me because he's concerned that if I don't reach my goals in the athletic world of going on to play professional football, that he was concerned about the academic side."
Mm.
So anyhow, I go to the Rhode Island to visit campus and the coaches and the players. And my Uncle Joe is with me from Long Island, giving support. He met with the coaches. We talked a lot about education. That was what he was most interested in. And I was most interested in going on and getting a contract to play professional football.
Okay.
So I decided in the end, it came down to a couple of schools. I decided on Rhode Island. They made an offer that was very, very favorable to me and the family as a whole. And I went to the University of Rhode Island.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they made you an offer you couldn't refuse. Is that right, Russ?
Yeah, kind of. You know what I mean? Sam
just
knows.
going in your background, and but
Sam knows how you make things work. You know.
Yeah.
Now, in the back then, it was the Yankee Conference football, and the quality of players. I'll just give you a couple of names of people who I actually befriended, who went on to play in the NFL. One guy was Greg Landry. He was the quarterback for the University of Massachusetts.
Okay.
I don't know if you ever remember him. He was there for about 15 years.
Wow. Where did he play? Or play?
He was a quarterback at the University of Massachusetts,
Yeah.
and he got drafted by the Detroit Lions, and he played there for many years.
Okay. Okay. So he was
And
one
a
of your
guy named
friends.
Milton Morin, who also played at the University of Massachusetts, who I happened to meet at midfield, and the first time I ever saw him, he was the kickoff guy, and I was the guy that was supposed to block the guy who kicked the ball. Well, Morin was 6'4", about 265, and he busted my helmet on the first play.
Okay.
So I knew I was in a little trouble, and he used bad language. It was another thing about it. Milt Morin went on to Cleveland Browns
Okay.
and became an all-pro tight end in the NFL
Oh, wow.
for years. There was another guy named John Hewitt, the University of Maine, who I was responsible for blocking. He was the middle linebacker for the University of Maine. He went on to a pretty good career as a linebacker for the Denver, what do they call them? Cowboys or no?
Broncos.
Broncos.
The Broncos.
Broncos.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Broncos.
Sure.
He played for the Broncos for quick. He was a real tough kid. And I mean, I got to know him only because he was my responsibility blocking the sucker, and he was a tough kid.
Yeah. So who was in the Yankee Conference at that time?
The Yankee Conference was Connecticut,
Mhm.
Vermont. Oh boy, we're going back so many
I
years.
know. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I could actually remember playing in Philadelphia against Temple
Against Temple. Okay.
1 year.
Okay.
Um,
University of Massachusetts or
oh yeah,
No.
we played UMass every year.
New Hampshire?
New Hampshire was in the hunt.
Okay. Okay.
I'm trying to think down on Long Island and down there. I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah.
on all the schools that we had.
Yeah.
But believe it or not, the talent, these are all Division I players, and they're all good. And of course, when I started as a sophomore.
Mm-hmm.
They had freshman football at the time, so you couldn't even play. But as a sophomore, I was about 235 pounds, pretty well rounded. I'd been working on a lot of weights. I was getting stronger, but I was playing against guys who were much bigger at that time on the defensive line.
Okay. And so you were you only played one way at that point, only offense, only as a center?
At Rhode Island, they did let me play a little defensive end.
Oh, they did.
Later
okay.
on.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. And what do you remember about those years? Did you guys make playoffs, conference titles, that sort of thing?
We always had problems, I think, more with injuries. We were like a mediocre, maybe a 5-5 team. You know, we'd lose some real tight, short games, real tight games. We didn't always have the greatest quarterback talent.
Mm-hmm.
We did have some running back talent, but skilled players. We did have one wide receiver. I played for Fran Geiselman, who wound up going to the Hall of Fame in Rhode Island.
Oh, wow.
Great receiver. He could catch the ball with one hand. You know, you see it on TV all the time now, but back then, this kid could stick his hand out and catch the ball, and I don't know how the heck he did it, but he was a heck of a receiver. But we never had too much to go beyond the end of the season there, Doug.
Okay.
Boston University, we used to play every
year.
year.
Oh, wow. Okay. Very nice. So you started as a sophomore, played the remaining 3 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
I played 2 years, and then I left school, and it was a bad decision in my life that I probably regret to this day, although I've been able to recover. As Sam said, I've had a little bit of success in the real estate business over the years, but things changed. I had a little bit of a problem with one of my coaches in the school there. Things weren't going right. There were some issues at home that I had to deal with. My parents had become divorced, and there was problems there. So I bailed out of school and started part-time school when I got back to stay in school, got a job, and eventually I got married. And I wound up with 2 kids before I signed my contract with the Hamilton Tiger Cats in the Canadian Football League in 1967.
Okay.
For $14,500, Doug.
Okay, that was your starting pay. So
you couldn't even buy a motorcycle with that. No.
Really? So how did you? Okay, so let me catch up. Make sure I'm in the right place. So you played through your junior year of college.
Yeah.
And then you say, I've got to take a break. And what was the break before you signed then with Hamilton? What kind of time period?
During that period of time, I went to school part-time, and I think for the most part, I just worked in the construction business, and I kept lifting weights and working out. And then my friend that I talk about, Grenard Poles, when he came back from work, playing in the Canadian League in the summer, we'd work out together. And then that's when he opened up my eyes to the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And I had the good fortune, I can't remember Ray, the coach that signed me. He had a sister or a relative in Rochester, but he had heard about me. And anyhow, Ray was my coach in Canada, but he wound up becoming the head coach for the Los Angeles Rams, who actually went to a Super Bowl.
Oh, wow. Yes.
I'm just missing his name right this minute. I can see his face, but.
Now, would that have been when the Rams were in St. Louis?
That was no, he was with Los Angeles Rams.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I forget the lady's name that she really liked him, but Ray was the coach that I worked with back then.
Okay. Okay.
Interestingly enough, my good friend today, Lou Picone, who played for the Bills for 10 years, the Jets and then the Bills, we kind of kid around a little bit. I said, Lou, I signed for 14.5. What'd you sign for? I signed for $13,000 with the Jets
Oh wow. Oh wow.
in his first season.
In his first season. So
He bought a Corvette
yeah.
in New York City. He went to practice one day and it got stolen out of the parking lot.
Good Lord. Good golly. So was there a combine or anything like that? How did the Canadian?
None of that would give me an opportunity. Yeah, no combines, and there was no way to transition back into football. And with Grenard giving me some pointers and ideas, I kind of reached out a little bit. And Ray Malavasi is the name of the coach.
Ray Malavasi. Okay.
Ray
So
Malavasi was the coach.
okay, so you just said, "Hey, I'm interested in playing." Did they invite you up then for a day?
He came to Rochester with a contract in his hand.
Oh, we did. Okay.
Yeah, I met him right in a restaurant in Rochester, New York, and he said we're ready to make an offer today.
So you
And I'm just married, right? I got a son. I got my daughter's maybe a year old, and a 3-year-old boy or 2-year-old boy or whatever, and I got, oh my God, you got a contract? Yeah, he says we're ready to go. We want you up here in July.
really? Okay.
So that kind of changed my life. I had no savings to speak of.
Yeah.
But we made things work with a little help from the family.
Yeah.
And I took off for camp in July of 1967.
So Russ, the coach comes in to Rochester. You meet him. Had he seen you play? Had he seen films? What was it that he showed up?
He had seen me on films in my college.
Okay.
He had talked to my college coach. He had located me,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he knew. Apparently, somebody said that they thought that I'd be a good candidate to maybe make the team.
Oh wow. Oh wow.
And of course, my strength at the time was that I could run. I used to run a lot, Doug. I don't want to make it sound like I'm bragging,
Yeah.
but I knew how important it was to be able to run. And back then we weren't big on the offensive line. I was only 235, 238 pounds.
Right. And you were
Now,
running.
some of those defensive guys were like 260, 270, but they couldn't run.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once we broke out into the corner and we take it upfield, that's why they wanted me. Special teams, I could get to the corner. They could pull me out and put me ahead of the half. It was a fast game. You see, in Canada, it's 3 downs.
Yeah.
To get a first down.
Okay. Yep. Moves
and the
fast.
field's
Yep.
55 yards wide and 110 yards deep.
Okay.
And the end zone's 20 yards deep.
Okay.
So it's a wide open game, a lot of fast action going on. And there's motion before the snap of the ball. If you ever watched the game, 2 or 3 people are moving in the backfield before the snap of the ball.
Okay. And what position were you playing for them?
I played offensive center, and they also had me on the depth chart. I was third on the depth chart, second in offensive line behind a guy named Gene Capitelli, and I was third in the middle linebacker on the depth chart.
Oh, wow. Okay. So saw a lot of action, saw a lot of game time. And Hamilton is just outside of Toronto?
Yeah, that's what it's Hamilton, Burlington area. Burlington's a steel mill town.
So you get picked up, you go play Canadian football. Are you still running your 4.7s? Your 40-yard dashes are still 4.7s?
I was running 4.7s until one day I got injured, my left leg. I got injured in a scrimmage practice, and I went in the training room. Back then, the training support wasn't as good as it is today, and I had a heck of a time after that with my left leg.
Okay.
And soon after that, Doug, unfortunately, I was traded to Toronto, and even though they were willing to keep my contract and take my contract, I decided not to play there, and I went home to my wife and kids.
So how many years did you play with
I
Hamilton?
just played that 1 year,
Just
in
that 1 year.
1967.
Okay.
Yep.
So injury kind of put an end to things and got.
Well, yeah, it was. I couldn't get that leg better. I think they wanted me more for linebacker than they did for offensive center. Is what I want.
Okay.
Now the guy that was the offensive center went to play for the New York Giants the following year.
Okay.
Cepatelli.
Okay, Cepatelli. So there was a path out of the CFL into the National Football League. That was what my plan was in the back of my mind, that if I could prove myself in this Canadian league, then I could move over. The other restrictive part of the Canadian Football League that I wasn't aware of is at that time, and it might still be the case, they only took 10 Americans. Really? So they at any point in time.
Discriminatory.
Okay. And you were one of 10 that got selected. Did you have fun? Was it a cool adventure?
Oh, it's a great adventure. I mean, God Almighty, you see people pouring out on these basketball courts or on these football fields. I mean, it's a hell of a rush. I mean, it's just more than football anymore when you're at that level. It's just the way the people in the community treat you, and it's a whole different life.
Yeah.
That I enjoyed for a short period of time.
Okay. But a lot of adventure and a lot of experience, I should say, let me back up. A lot of experience in football, starting when you were young, playing in the lot behind Gary's house, all the way up through the CFL. So how old are you when you come back from Canada and say, I need to move on, got to do something different?
So I'm around 22 years old with a wife and 2 kids.
Okay. Okay. And what'd you do at that point? Yeah.
Well, this is where it's going to bring Sam Swearingen into this scenario.
Okay.
For a couple of years, I get into the construction business. I got an offer to be a construction superintendent and relatively good income. My wife was working part-time, and there was about a 4-year spread before I started my own construction company, building mostly homes, but some industrial and commercial buildings. And by 1975 is how I get closer to the Swearingen clan.
Okay.
Because I'm still not in the rodeo arena although Gary Sikoria and others are already going to rodeos. I'm not aware of that until I moved to Caledonia, New York in 1975.
Okay.
That's when I bought 16 acres of vacant land that was wooded with a plan to build 8 homes on the road frontage.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that. And the young men that helped me build those 8 new homes were Sam Swearingen, Mike Swearingen, and another young guy who's gone to glory now, a steer wrestler and a great rodeo cowboy, Tom Margate.
Yes. And I believe through the years, and I've been talking to some folks, of course, as we always do. Joe Farley, I believe he pitched in here and there.
Well, Farley worked more on another project.
Okay.
With another rodeo cowboy, Vern Edwards.
Vern Edwards, yes.
I kind of had to keep Farley away from the Swearingens, or I'd never get anything done.
Because they were such hard workers and they wanted to be in control. What was it?
No, they wanted to leave on Thursday as soon as they can to get to a rodeo.
Well, and that's kind of the theme we picked up as I talked to folks, and in the sport of rodeo, we talk about the miles and the hours of driving, but my goodness, the support system, the bosses and the work that, is flexible enough to help these young folks as they come up into the sport.
Doug, and I don't know if it's about the bosses being flexible enough, because we were going to go.
Yeah.
It didn't matter.
Right.
The job was not that important compared to rodeo.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was pretty young in 75. I really hadn't started rodeoing a whole lot. But as it went on, when I was working for Russ, and it more like in the 77, probably 78 is when nothing else mattered. 79, you just went.
You just went, yeah. But to have that ability to leave again on a Thursday night and know when you got back on Monday, whenever that was, that you could pick back up and had a job still.
Yeah, it was good that they let us do that, and as it went on, I said as my boys would pull out and head to rodeos without me, I said, now I know how Dad felt.
Yeah.
I got all this hay to do. I got all this, and they're waving goodbye. Ha ha.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Russ, was it hard employing a bunch of cowboys that I mean, cowboys are cowboys, right?
Yeah.
But come Thursday night, come definitely Friday noon, they're peeling out and they're gone.
Yeah, well, the incentive for them is that they worked hard for 4 days.
Okay.
That's what I got out of them.
Yeah.
And they knew they were going to get their check on Thursday night, so they're free to start driving, go home, pack, or they're already packed and ready to go. All they did was carry a little bag with them anyhow, and Sammy carried his bronc saddle.
Okay. And was that then the introduction? You hired these. Did you know they were rodeo cowboys when you hired them?
Well, I had met Mike.
Yeah.
And when I started to learn how to steer wrestle, Gary Sikori says, you should start steer wrestling. I said, I don't even know if I can ride a horse. But anyhow, I bought 2 horses from Gary right away and got that out of the way. So I started riding horses, getting familiar with that. And I went to my first clinic to learn how to steer wrestle in 1975 is where I met Mike Swearingen.
Okay. Who was running that clinic at that time? Gary?
So that clinic was put on by Russ McCrae at his farm in East Aurora, New York. And the farm was actually called The Ranch.
The Ranch. Okay.
And it was a large house and a huge indoor arena with, I don't know, maybe 50, 60 stables. Russ was doing real well with that business, and he had a tack shop in what would you call it? Orchard
East
Park.
Aurora.
It was East Aurora, Sam, right? And it was called the Corral Saddlery, and his wife was running the tack shop, and they were doing really good financially at that point.
Yeah. So Russ
McCrae asked Ward Mitchell to come and help him because he had like 8 or 10 of us that wanted to learn how to steer wrestle in 2 days.
Okay. And there's the name Ward Mitchell. That comes up a lot. Of course, talking to Joe Farley and Mike and Sam. I mean, that's a name that was the generation before that helped get a lot of these cowboys started. So you're 20, 22, 25-ish?
Well, I'm about 20. I'm probably 20. 20. I'm 28 years old.
To do the math.
Well, I'm 28 years old when I get down on my first steer.
Really? Okay.
Here's the problem, Doug. I threw that steer in 4.5 seconds.
Oh, wow. You're
in
very
front of
first.
Ward Mitchell.
Yes, very first.
In front of Ward Mitchell.
Yeah.
He says, you're all set. Go ahead. Go ahead. The problem was he didn't tell me I was going to miss the next 10.
And by this point, the injury and so forth from the Canadian Football League when you hurt your leg is everything's back. You're feeling okay at this point.
Yeah. So my leg gets better, and the left leg only until I sprained my left knee in about 1981.
Okay.
Out in Indiana, I was with Mike Swearingen at the time. And we were kind of with Jack Wiseman. We weren't hauling with him, but we were going to the same rodeos because I used to mount Jack's horse.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And I can't tell you the name of the Evansville, Indiana, something like that. I sprained my left knee.
You're okay.
So that got me into getting the knee brace.
Uh-huh.
but it started the decline of the career that eventually ended in 1983.
1983. So in 70, so you went for a number of years. You went for what? Almost 7 years?
Almost 9 years.
Almost 9. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I started in 75. I really went hard, I would say, from 76 to about 81.
76
and
to
in the
81.
later part of the 70s is when Sam really kicked it into gear. And I know Sam used to jump in the truck with Mike when Mike wasn't with Wiseman, and we'd probably hit 4 to 5 rodeos in a weekend.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you were hustling. Married, still got kids, still going on. So you've got still building. You're pretty busy. You're a weekend warrior at that point.
I'm a weekend warrior. You know, my wife's just watching me go out the driveway about noon on a Friday.
Yeah.
And we usually would hit Jim Zinser, J Bar J rodeos in Michigan, because they're only 5 hours away if you go up through Canada.
Yeah.
So if we went that way, if we went to Michigan, then we come back to Ontario, or we'd go over to Delmarva in Delaware, Virginia.
You bet.
And we'd hit those rodeos, and then we come back through Pennsylvania. And then if there was another one back in New York, we'd hit that coming back through.
Very nice. And all of our listeners love traveling stories. Anything come as you were traveling hard at that point? Anything come to mind?
Mike wouldn't be too happy about it, but we're at a rodeo in Ontario, Canada. And Mike did real well up there. I had some good fortune in Canada, and I'm sure Sam did over the years. A lot of good cowboys up there, and we were really competitive. So one night, Mike has got Sarah, who's about 6 months old, and he's in the back of the camper with Ann, and he's tired because he's just 4-event cowboy, and I'm only a 1-event steer wrestler. He says, "Why don't you drive the first leg?" Well, what that meant, Doug, was I was going to drive all the way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Who's going to wake him up at 3 a.m. when I'm running down 90 trying to get somewhere in Michigan somewhere? Mike says, "I hate to bother you." He says, "But can you warm up the bottle of milk?" I said, "How am I going to do that, Mike? I'm going 75 miles an hour with this. I got a horse trailer in back and you." And he says, "It's this little thing. Ann just bought it. You plug this into the cigarette lighter and it'll warm it up, and then put it on your arm and see if it's hot." I said, "You put it on your arm and see if it's hot."
So plug it in. And no rodeo podcast going down the road at 3 a.m, right? Did you even have AM radio? You probably had AM radio at the time.
No, we had CB radios.
Oh, you had CBs. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were.
That's what kept us alive. I mean, awake and alive.
So what was your handle on the CB?
Caledonia Bulldogger.
Caledonia Bulldogger. I like that. That might be the name of this episode, Caledonia Bulldogger. So that any other traveling stories come to mind? That's a good one. Heating up the baby bottle.
Traveling stories with Mike and Daryl going up to St. Pete, where you guys go. I'm sure you stay in beautiful hotels. Our showers were in the horse barn. Daryl goes, "Let's go take a shower." I said, "You're heading down the horse barn. Aren't we going to a hotel?" "In a hotel. Can you afford a hotel?" I said, "No." He said, "I can't either. Yeah. We're going in the horse barn. We're going to take a shower there."
Well, I talked to Mike a little bit earlier today, and he said you used to come to his house when he was still living in Leicester, had the trailer in Leicester, and he said he set up a couple bales of hay for you to practice, and he said you would just pile off. There wasn't no steers at that point, no steers to practice on. Do you remember those? Remember those days?
That was in the backyard of the Swearingen Farm on Dunkley Road.
Yeah.
Mike says what we're going to do is we're just going to put bales of hay out and back, and we're going to get you to where you get down in the hole, get down in the hole, get down in the hole. Okay. And that was that formative year, because I knew that I did not want to keep missing steers, so I knew I had to learn quickly how to get in that hole and catch that inside horn.
Get in that hole.
And knock on wood, by 1977, I started figuring it out pretty good. I won a couple rodeos, one of which was St. Tite, 1977.
Really? St. Tite, 1977. That is absolutely excellent. You know, Sam and I
that was a great story. You want that story on St. Tite?
So we're always looking for St. Tite stories. Yeah.
So St. Tite, I was introduced to St. Tite by Mike.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he had told Sam, but I don't remember if Sam came with us the first year I went, but I think it was the second year that Mike went, and that was 1976.
1976.
So Mike says, you're really going to like it because you got jackpots. We leave Monday, and we got jackpots Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. You can get some extra money, and then the rodeo starts Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Okay.
I said, oh, gee, great. So we go up there, and I think Mike had bought a motorhome or something, if you can call it that, and we took that up there. And in the jackpots, I was really fortunate because I drew good steers, and I had Darrell Lane there.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Darrell was not only my coach and good friend, but he also had a great dogging horse named Lippy.
Mm-hmm.
It had a funny-looking bottom lip on it. So Lippy was a great bulldogging horse for me, and I was very, very fortunate. I drew the pup steer in the rodeo on Sunday. I won a good amount of money in the jackpots the 3 days that we had jackpots. And then I won the rodeo. I was the last steer wrestler in the rodeo in 1977. And I had the pup steer, and I ran a 4-2 to win it all. And the crowd went wild. And I don't know, there's probably 10,000 people there, maybe more at the time.
Yeah. So at that point, are you like, hey, we're rolling down the road full time now. We're going west.
Going more. I'm going more, and I'm going to better shows.
Yeah.
I'm going to Longhorn rodeos, indoor rodeos, Pontiac, Michigan.
Oh, wow.
I had a great run in Pontiac, Michigan, but out of 6 steer wrestlers, I think I finished 7th out of 154 steer wrestlers. I had a great run there, but, you know, you're running in the slack. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, and there's a whole bunch of people going off after that money. So.
You bet. I mean, we hear some of the stories. That was Longhorn Rodeo, right, in Pontiac?
Yeah, so Loretta Lynn started the deal, sold it to a guy named Bruce Lerke.
Yep.
And they ran a heck of a show, and Longhorns was a good pay. It was a good paycheck, even if you finished 4th, and they could pay money all the way down to 6th, depending on how many contestants.
Yeah. So with 167 steer wrestlers, you use the word slack, and slack is simply we got more than we can get into the performances because you're only going to allow probably 8 or 10 in the performance just because of the show, you know, the quality of the show. We want to run it in 2 hours or whatever. So the slack would run, in this case, 1 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it starts, that would have been on a Wednesday, did you say?
No, we were, I can remember being in a Pontiac.
Yeah.
Silver Dome with Russ McRae, Freddie Marty, Eddie Prozier.
Yeah.
I think Gary was with us. The rough stock slack started about 11:30. Steer wrestling slack started about 1 o'clock in the morning.
Wow. And you had one run, then
I had a great run that Gary Sikoria keeps reminding me about. I mean, I got out right. I had a good steer. I had a fast throw. And I was in real good shape on the money board at that time, but it was the first night of slack.
I see.
I think they paid 6 places, and I'm wound up in 7th place.
Okay. And that was just a single go rodeo?
Yeah, one go round with, I think it was 154 bulldoggers.
154. Wow. Can you imagine? And, yeah, I mean, anytime you've got slack in the bronc riding, that's a lot of contestants showing up. What stood out for you?
Absolutely, it was a lot of money. What was the added money?
But put it in perspective.
Sam might know better than me. I never got involved in that part of it too much, you know.
I do know that Pontiac was a 1-day rodeo.
1-day rodeo.
Okay. 1-day rodeo.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
I don't know if it was Saturday night or Sunday. I don't remember, but it was one performance, 1 day. And it added 5,000 per event.
Holy cow.
Back then in the 70s. And that was by far the biggest prize money rodeo of any rodeo at that time. So not only did you had slack in the timed events, but in the rough stock also, because just one performance, they might buck, 10, 12 horses and 15 bulls. And you would probably have at a $5,000 added rodeo, which was the biggest of the time, you'd probably have 30 bronc riders, probably 80 bull riders, or maybe 100. So there was a lot of slack. And the timed events is crazy because it was just, there's probably 200 barrel racers. Who knows? I don't remember.
Yeah.
But and Russ is exactly right. When you get 150 guys, it's like Colton right now. He's playing against everybody, and there's 150 guys at every one of those big rodeos you have to beat. And if everything's not perfect, you're not going to win or place.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
well, what's interesting, I just Googled it, right? To say what in 1980, I know it was 79, 80, 82, whatever. 5K back then is worth about 20 grand today.
Wow.
Okay.
And that's something.
Can you imagine going into a show? Well, I mean, of course you can imagine. I mean, everything else was added money at the time, and of course that's the amount of money that the producer puts up for the competitions. I mean, it wasn't unusual to see $50 to $100 added monies in those days, was it? In regular rodeo?
That was the going rate.
That was
$100 added was the going rate, and the indoor rodeos would add 1,000.
Would add 1,000. Okay.
Would add 1,000, and when he started moving it up, it's like, wow, he didn't. Bruce Lurkey, what he did, his bigger, better ones, he would always put a little more prize money in for the contestants, and anything over 1,000 was like, woohoo, this is wonderful.
Well, so it was a single go, only one opportunity to compete, just a Saturday night rodeo, let's say. It was either Saturday night or Sunday. So how did they get the champions in the, you know what I'm saying? The top echelon. How did you get them into the Saturday night main performance?
I don't know. I don't know if they did.
Okay.
I rode in the performance there, and I wasn't that great at that time, but I don't know if it was random draw or they said, okay, we're going to take the best people we know and put them in there. I don't have a clue. And hopefully we can talk to Sheila Lurkey and Heather and get that answered for us.
Get that answer. Okay. That is just incredible. And we are going to dig deeper on Longhorn and that rodeo and everything, as Sam just said. So let me back up a bit. You went pretty hard. You had to learn something brand new that you had never done before, meaning steer wrestling. What did you bring from the football life, from your experience in on the football field? What did you bring to your rodeo?
Well, that's a great question, because I think the funniest part of this, and Sam's probably heard this before, when you're in the rodeo arena and in a football game for me, and then going into the rodeo, playing middle linebacker, you're looking at the play, and then sometimes when I did it subconsciously, I would actually slow everything down in my mind to try to figure out what's happening, because sometimes people get too excited and they take themselves out of position. When I first started steer wrestling, I was taking myself out of position because I was thinking too quickly. And I learned this from Mike Swearingen, Gary Sikoria, Ward Mitchell, and Darrell Lane. Slow it down in your mind, and you'll go faster in your time. So what I used to do when I converted from football, working in the middle of the football field, looking at what's in front of me, to looking at the steer coming out of that chute, when I nodded my head, I had a focus of a little square. I saw myself in that square catching that steer right now. But I didn't try to struggle with the time issue of making it fast in my mind. I'd already settled on what I was going to do. Slow down your thinking, and you'll have a quicker time throwing steers. It don't sound logical, but it's true.
Yeah, yeah. And everything, if you're throwing in a 4 or 4-2 or 4-4, some of the times you've talked about, my goodness, I mean, it's all automatic, right? It's all without thought, isn't it?
Absolutely. Once you're in the hole and you got the inside horn, if you do the technique the way you were taught, that I was taught, boom, and that steer is going to take that turn, it's done. It's over with in 4 seconds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But then there's those steers that they run you to the other end of the pen, and you don't have a shot in the world.
Yeah, yeah. So how could you talked about slow it down in your mind. How did you do that? What was the mental preparation?
I relaxed myself when I got into box. I still watch steer wrestling almost every night of the week, and I see these guys jacking their horse around in the box and jacking, and they're too nervous sitting on a horse, and a horse knows that. I got to learn how to relax on a horse, and in that bulldogging box, when I nodded my head, I wasn't thinking I'm in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
I was only thinking about getting to that box, getting in that box, and catching that steer.
Mm-hmm. And that box is that square that you're talking about?
That's what I envisioned.
Okay. So
and if you watch the most successful steer wrestlers today, they're probably doing something real similar to that, because they got it, unless they break out. I mean, occasionally I break the barrier like a lot of people do, but
mm-hmm. And
I was pretty fortunate to get out a lot of times, get out pretty good.
So when you're backing in the box, you're in St. Tite, you're the last dogger to go, a lot of money on the line back then, a lot of money. You could still slow down your thinking, slow down your mind, get focused on relaxing in the box on the back of the horse, which calms the horse,
Absolutely.
which you said. Did you focus on breathing? Did you just clear your mind? Did you just set everything?
No, well, Daryl come over on the bulldog, on the Hazen horse. He said, take a deep breath. You got the pup. Bulldog, let's go.
Okay.
And that was it.
Okay. Without thought,
And, of course, I got the best steer. And once I got my hands on that steer, back then I was probably pretty strong at that point in time in my life. That sucker went down fast.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm going to ask a question going the other way now, because you,
Sure.
9 years you were dogging, you were going pretty hard. You went from zero experience to zero knowledge of steer wrestling. What have you learned from rodeo that you practice in your life today that you brought forward?
Well, I wrote a couple things down, so I know we're closing this thing out a little bit. So I wanted to bring a few things up that really mean a lot to me about those rodeo years and those experiences
Mm-hmm.
that you asked.
Yeah.
Starting out with the Ward Mitchells and the Rutch McCraes at the very beginning, and the Mike Swearingens. One of the things that I learned in rodeo very quickly is that even though those cowboys were competing against me in some way, they were also coaching me and helping me to get better. That I always appreciated, and I shared that as I progressed in my career to help those younger cowboys coming up and giving them encouragement. That was one of the things.
Mm-hmm.
I met an awful lot of interesting people, too many to mention, but there's a few that I would like. And that is a guy named John Downing.
Oh, yeah.
He wasn't a cowboy, but he was a very good friend that I met at the Attica Rodeo. You know John.
Mm-hmm.
And John was a wonderful person. Sam knows him. Great guy. And John was announcing the Attica Rodeos back in the time when I was running pretty hard. But he said, I heard that you have a little bit of ability about announcing and have an interest. I said, yeah, kind of. And he says, why don't you come and help me announce some of the Attica Rodeo, do a little bit of the barrel racing and the steer wrestling. I'd love to have you up here in the announcer's stand. I said, gee, that would be an honor. I wasn't looking to get paid. And he said, I'd like to have you up here.
Oh, wow.
So I got to know him real well. He used to come upstate New York every year to Saratoga for the yearling sale at Saratoga racehorses. But he loved coming to the Attica Rodeo. I think he did it for 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
One great guy.
Yeah, a gentleman. Absolutely a gentleman.
A wonderful guy.
Yep.
And then my friend who left us too early in life, Jack Wiseman, probably the toughest cowboy person I've ever met in my life was Jack Wiseman. Steer wrestling champion, bull riding champion. Sam knew him well. Jack and I hit it off. I was a rookie. He had all the respect in the world for me. He helped me. He mounted me when I couldn't get mounted by other people in faraway places in Indiana, in Ohio, no matter where. If Jack was there, he would cover me with a horse, and I could get a good chance of winning money in the steer wrestling with Jack Wiseman.
Wow.
Another guy that I occasionally see on television, who became a good friend over time at mostly the Jim Zinser rodeos and the Longhorn rodeos, was Tom Orr.
Oh, yeah.
And he always used to say, come on out to Yak, Montana. And one year, real quick, I know we're running out of time, driving back from Florida in a 1982 Buick I just bought, Doug.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm up, I think I'm going up 95, and I see a guy with a saddle bronc saddle hitchhiking. And I said to my wife, I just went by Tom Orr.
Oh, my goodness.
She goes, who's Tom Orr?
Oh, my goodness.
I said, well, you're about to meet him. I turned around, I picked him up. I said, Tom Orr. Yeah. I said, Russ Romano. He said, oh, my God, what are you doing here? I said, well, my question is, what are you doing here?
Right.
I said, at least I got a car. He said, I'm hitchhiking to Bristol. There's a rodeo in Bristol, Virginia, and I got to get up there. I said, well, jump in. So we threw the saddle in the trunk, and he jumped in the vehicle, and it was the greatest ride. And, of course, through Mike, we've been invited to go out and visit with him several times in Yak, Montana, but we haven't taken him up on that yet. Maybe we will this year.
Okay. Tom Moore, the mountain man.
Yeah, Tom Moore.
Okay. Excellent.
So that was the experiences, the people that I met, the experiences, the people you meet, and the experiences you have. So many people on the list here, too many names to mention now, but
yeah.
As I closed down my career in rodeo and got into the real estate business, as Sam mentioned, I had good fortune in the real estate business over the years. I became a national sales trainer. I traveled all over the United States teaching people sales skills, techniques for years.
Wow.
And I have kind of semi-retired now. But advice to athletes, you asked me to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And I mentioned a guy named Bear Pasco. Bear Pasco is still steer wrestling. He played for the New York Giants when my very good friend Tom Coughlin was the head coach.
Okay.
What I didn't talk to you about in our podcast is that I had 3 years coaching with Tom Coughlin in 1970, 71, and 72 when he first started his coaching career.
Where was he coaching?
At RIT in Rochester.
In Rochester. Oh,
He hired me as his defensive line coach.
Oh, wow.
And I've been forever grateful for that. And I used to tell my friends, this Tom Coughlin is special. He's going somewhere in football, and someday he's going to be a millionaire. And the truth came out. He's a millionaire, and Sam will enjoy this. The key point is he got the million, and I got the air.
That's good. I like that.
You've got a lot of air, Russ. I'd give you that.
He did good. I like that.
It's beautiful.
I like that.
Yeah,
So
great.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, that's a great part of the story. So, what is your advice to athletes? If you want to narrow it down to what's your advice to somebody wanting to do some whatever, what's your advice just from life, rodeo, football, etc.?
If you get knocked down, you got to get up and go for it. I think that the biggest thing that I regret is when I left Canada as a young man, I didn't really try to figure out and sort out how I could do this deal and stay in football that I knew I could catch on. I mean, some of these guys go to combines for 2 and 3 years before they even get a contract for 1 year with a team. But if you got a goal in life, pursue it and do everything you can to accomplish it. If that doesn't work and other opportunity comes along like steer wrestling, which most people probably don't want to do, I'd say give it a shot. It was a lot of fun for me. I didn't get badly injured. Over 10 years I did. Dislocated my shoulders, about the worst thing that ever happened.
Oh, wow.
And popped my knee. I had a knee sprain for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
That was it.
So no lingering injuries, nothing that ails you either from football or rodeo?
No, neither of the, none of that at all.
Okay, very fortunate. Well done. Well done. And still staying in shape, still getting out and about and following rodeo?
Planet Fitness is 7:15 in the morning, whether I want it or not.
Oh, wow. Good to have that discipline. Good. Well, Russ, we want to thank you for being on the show. This has been a hoot. I am excited for what you have brought, and what a great story. So thank you.
Yeah, well, it's an honor to be a part of the podcast, and I'm glad that I could share some stories with my fellow friends and cowboys who we hit the road for an awful long time for a little bit of money.
You bet. You bet. All right, Sam, any thoughts before we say goodbye to Russ?
Well, it's just thank you, Russ. I appreciate you coming on and doing this with us, and I know how much you've done for the people back here in New York, and we've enjoyed every bit of it. And you know, we don't get together enough to say thank you. So I will say thank you right now. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam.
You bet. And let us know when you're back in New York. I on occasion get up to upstate New York, so it'd be great to meet you in person. And who knows? That sounds like there's always more stories. Yeah,
we'll look forward to either Mike or Sam throwing a party, and I always attend those. I don't want to miss them.
Okay, excellent. All right. Thank you, Russ, for everything. Really appreciate it.
Thanks. God bless you.
God bless you.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And we hope you enjoyed this episode of our podcast with New York Rodeo cowboy Russ Romano. If you do, please share with your friends. Let's get it out into the world. To make your listening easier, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Search for Beyond the Chutes and follow us. And please like us, rate us, give us comments. We love to hear from you, and I do my best to respond to every single comment that gets put up. A reminder, check out our Beyond the Chutes Facebook page and click to follow. And don't forget the New York Rodeo Museum Facebook page. It was the Facebook page that started this whole podcast. We'd like to say thank you to Parasite Systems for the push-button parasitic diagnostic system for your pasture animals, your horses, your cattle, your goats, your sheep, your chickens. You can find them at Parasite Systems. You know, Sam, I got in my hand one of these test kits. And it's probably 6 by 6 in dimensions. And inside you've got a little puck. That's where you put the poo. That's the official term, the horse poo. And it's about a little hockey puck. Well, it's about the size of a 50-cent piece. Talked to Joe Farley. He sent his back in this week, so we're going to get some testing. You send it in to Parasite Systems. They test to see what kind of worms, parasites, if any, that your horse is carrying. And we have a coupon for BTC, for Beyond the Chutes, for 50% off these kits. All you got to do is go online, or you know what? If you want it, email me at doug@beyondthechutes.show, and I will make sure that we get a kit coming to you, 50% off. So use that coupon code. It's time. It's spring, Sam. We got to be testing our cattle. We got to be testing our horses. See what kind of parasites they are fighting right now.
Yes, and did mine this week.
Okay,
and sent it in.
Okay.
Actually, Buck Young did it.
Okay.
With the horses that I've sold them.
Yep.
So that'll be coming in probably under his name. He said he should have put it under mine, but
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see what's going on with it. You know,
bet.
Get them ready for that green grass coming.
You bet. And we talk all about the cowboys, cowgirls getting in shape, running down the road right now, all the miles, everything they're doing. Get your equine partners in shape. Let's make sure they're ready to run, can stand up to the stresses of all the hauling you're going to be putting them through. Those late nights you're driving, they're riding. So let's take care of our animals. This is Beyond the Chutes with
Russ Romano.
and
Sam Swearingen.
till next time, this is Doug Simcox. Thank you for listening.